What's going on, everybody? Josh Engleman for Awesemo.com, and I am back with my top 5 on DraftKings for Week 4 in the NFL. Now be sure to hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, hit the notification bell so you know when everything goes live. Head to Twitter and follow me at Josh Engleman, only place you're going to get updates to my sim results as we get closer to lock. Let me know in the comment section, who are some of your favorite plays at quarterback, running back, wideout, or tight end. You can even tell me defenses if you want. And finally, shout out to No House Advantage for being the presenting sponsor of this video. Use the promo code Awesemo when signing up to get yourself a little bit of extra cash on that first deposit. You guys can see the defenses on the screen. I am not digging into that other than to say that the Lions look like the best GPP defense of the week. That's not exciting. They just happen to be 2,200. But now we are going to start it off with the tight ends. Not a lot of variability at tight end this week. We do have one guy separating from the pack. It won't be all that surprising when you see it, but we're rounding out the bottom of my top 10, and this should be interesting. Conklin, Pitts, Thomas, no chance I'm going with that name, so we're calling him Albert, and then Jack Doyle coming in at number 6. Who will be my tight end favorites for this coming Sunday? It is officially time to find out. Really glad this guy isn't coming in at number 1 because I'm really tired of rostering him. Tyler Higbee, 4,600, projected for 11 fantasy points. Matchup against the Cardinals, great spot, 54.5 point game total. 7th ranked offense for the Rams. He's not going for north of 30 anytime soon, but an 8% chance to be in the optimal lineup. Dalton Schultz had a big week against the Eagles. Now he's showing up at number 4, just 3,400, projected for 8.3 fantasy points. Cowboys are 4.5 point favorites with a 51.5 point total. The Panthers defense only ranks 17th at PFF, nothing crazy there. And he just happens to slightly edge out Tyler Higbee. This is how crazy tight end is. Dalton Schultz has a 9% chance to be in the optimal, which means there's a 91% chance that he's not. But that's not all that different than the guy that's in 2nd or 3rd or 5th or 6th. So don't get too bogged down at tight end. If this person's Noah Fant shows up in the number 3 spot, 4,300, projected for 10.5. Matchup against Baltimore, whose defense is as good as you want to think that it is. 14th. When you say Baltimore Ravens, you always just assume that their defense is a top 5 defense, and it's just not the case any longer. So they are 14th via PFF. 9% chance to be in the optimal. He's a little bit more expensive than Dalton Schultz, so he's got a higher median, but I think both guys have similar ceilings. Now we're into the real tight ends. Number 2, Travis Kelce gets up to a 10% optimal percentage. He's 8,100, projected for 20.5 fantasy points. A matchup against the Eagles. They're a slightly above average defense, but the Chiefs are 7-point favorites, 54.5 point total. You're expecting receptions. You're hoping for touchdowns. What's not to like for Travis Kelce this Sunday? And finally, the number 1 contender at tight end, that's $5,900 George Kittle, projected for 15 fantasy points. San Francisco's taking on Seattle. They're 3-point favorites, a 52-point total. Niners offense isn't exceptional. They're 20th, slightly below average. 16th ranked defense, though, for Seattle. This looks pretty good. Kittle is too cheap for this scenario. 14% likelihood that he is in the optimal. He is far and away, well, maybe not far and away, but pretty clearly the number 1 tight end this week. We move it over to wide receiver, where we have some clear separation at the top, but rounding out the bottom of my top 10, Terrence Marshall, Cortland Sutton, CeeDee Lamb, Terry McLaurin, and Robert Woods on the outside looking in. We move it along to my number 5 wideout. And that would be Amari Cooper, 6K, projected for 17.5 fantasy points. Great matchup, same as Dalton Schultz against these Carolina Panthers. 17th ranked defense there, so it fits pretty well. You're expecting some scoring, 51.5 point game total. Cooper goes for north of 30 fantasy points, 3.5% of the time, so there is some ceiling here, and a 17% chance that he's in the optimal. He just really looks nice at 6K, and if he hits his ceiling, he will absolutely, well, if anybody hits their ceiling, they're generally necessary, but at 6K, he fits in any build you're making, so Cooper looks great. Joining our number 1 tight end in a top 10, that would be number 4, Deebo Samuel, projected for 18.4 fantasy points. He's 6,500. A nice matchup, honestly, against the Seattle Seahawks. A 6% chance to go for north of 30. That felt a little high to me. I'm very interested in Deebo this week. 18% likelihood that he is in the optimal lineup. I love the double pairing there. If you want to double stack up the Niners in the spot, certainly have some Seattle options to bring back. Nobody's ever complained about getting DK Metcalf or Tyler Lockett. So I think Samuel looks really good and certainly looks good as a part of a 49ers stack. Don't need to explain a lot here. Number 3, Davante Adams, 7,900, 23 fantasy point projection. Matchup against honestly, like a solid Pittsburgh defense. They are 4th at PFF. Also 4th at PFF, the Packers offense. They're 6.5 point favorites, 45.5 point total. So you do wish that you could see a little bit more scoring, but still, between Aaron Jones and Davante Adams, you expect most of the work to go to both of those guys. And that's enough to put Adams into the 3 spot because 22% of the time he's going for more than 30 fantasy points, 19% likelihood that he's going to be in an optimal lineup. You know the ceiling you're getting for Adams. You should get him a lot. At number 2, the star of the wide receiver core so far this season, that is Cooper Kupp, 7,800, projected for 23 fantasy points. I mean, this is no joke any longer. 4-point favorites, 54.5 point total. A Cardinals defense that's a bit above average, but even still, given the way that Cooper Kupp has been involved, he's got a 23% chance to go for more than 30, 22% in the optimal lineup. He's our number 2 wideout. The price is starting to climb, but I see no reason to get away from him. Closing out the wide receiver spot with my number 1 this week, that is DJ Moore. Only 6,600, projected for 21 fantasy points. Slight dogs in a game where you're expecting them to throw. 51.5 point game total. Cowboys defense, not very good, 24th. Obviously, Panthers offense, not as good, but still no CMC, so Moore's going to see a little bit more work. 13.5% chance to go for north of 30. That's a pretty high number for someone in the mid-6s in salary, and a 28% likelihood to be in the optimal. DJ Moore, because of his salary and role on the Panthers, is my number 1 wideout this week on DraftKings. Ultra flat exposures at running back. It's going to be a tough week. Derrick Henry, Chuba Hubbard, DeAndre Swift, Antonio Gibson, Najee Harris. They're all rounding out the bottom of the top 10, but it wouldn't take much to move someone from, say, Swift's spot at 8 to the number 2 spot. Very little separation at running back. So pay very close attention to the ownership of your lineup as you're building it out, because I think that you can use multiple running backs and it's not really changing your lineup construction all that much. Looked really good at his lower price last week. Clyde Edwards-Helaire at 5,400, projected for 14 fantasy points. He's not catching as many passes as you would expect, but the ground game is there. It's the number 5 offense against the number 13 defense. If the Chiefs get out in front and at 1-2 this year, you expect them to flip a switch a little bit. Edwards-Helaire is going to get a lot of work in the second half if you believe in that game script. 14% likelihood to be in the optimal. At the very least, 5,400 makes him an excellent value play. Speaking of value running backs, $5,600 Darrell Henderson is projected for 15.4 fantasy points. There's going to be a lot of plays and I hope a lot of scoring in this matchup against the Cards. I'm not all that worried about his role, not at all. The ceiling might not be there. Cooper Kupp and Robert Woods have a lot to do with that, but he's got a 1% chance to go for north of 30. We might see that once this year. 15% chance to be in the optimal lineup altogether. This is just another guy in the 5s that is very easy to roster this week. Now we can start paying up. $8,400 Alvin Kamara, projected for 22.8 fantasy points. Great matchup against the Giants, number 23 ranked defense. This is not a very good Saints offense, but it's not like Kamara's coming off the field for anything. He's involved in everything that they do. 23% likelihood that he goes for more than 30 fantasy points, but just a 15% chance that he's in the optimal altogether. It's a lot easier to find the value at running back this week, so paying up for Kamara isn't something that I'm going to do aggressively, but I do think he is probably the best pay-up option you're going to find. Because we've got another 5K running back in at number 2. That's Mike Davis, projected for 14.4 fantasy points. Matchup against a slightly above average football team defense, 47.5 point total. This game's going to be competitive. No real telling on how this game script is going to work out. Atlanta, 1.5-point dogs here. 0.5% chance to go for north of 30, but you don't really need that. If he gets into the 20s, you're hoping for a touchdown and quite a few receptions, but 16% chance to be in the optimal. Again, another guy in the 5s with a similar odds of being in an optimal lineup. You're just going to have to cross your fingers and hope you pick the right one or two. And we close it out with another 5K running back. That's $5,800 David Montgomery. He's the #1 running back this week, projected for 17 fantasy points. Great matchup against the Detroit Lions. Problem is only a 41.5-point total because these offenses aren't very good. Problem is the Lions defense dead last at PFF, 32nd. 3% chance to go for north of 30. 19% likelihood he's in the optimal lineup. David Montgomery is your #1 running back this week on DK. Now, before we close it out with the quarterbacks, another reminder, like button, subscribe to the channel, notification bell, head to Twitter, follow me at Josh Engleman, comment section underneath this video, favorite contenders, any position you want to talk about, I'm happy to join in that discussion. And finally, one last reminder, go to No House Advantage. Use the promo code Awesemo when signing up. Get yourself a little bit of extra cash on that first deposit. Another reminder, you want to worry about quarterbacks in relationship to your stacks, but for right now, individually, Mahomes, Garoppolo, Darnold, Brissett, and Prescott round out the bottom of the top 10. Let's close it out with the quarterbacks. At number 5, we've got Matt Ryan. I didn't really touch on too many pass catchers from Atlanta, but no matter. He's only 5,400, very easy to get to. You expect Matt Ryan to throw, that is what he does. 47.5-point game total isn't the worst in the world. You're not really thinking he's going for north of 30. 8% chance he's in the optimal. When push comes to shove here, if you're going to Matt Ryan, hopefully you're getting Ridley, hopefully you're getting Pitts, and you're probably bringing McLaurin back on the other side. Now, this one shouldn't be too surprising. 8K Josh Allen projected for 27 fantasy points. 17-point favorites against the Houston Texans because they stink. 31st ranked defense at PFF. 26.5% chance that Allen's going north of 30. It all depends on the game script of this one. They might just lean on the run game. Josh Allen could conceivably not even play the fourth quarter. It's a great spot. You definitely want Diggs, maybe Cole Beasley. Maybe you want to be able to bring somebody back. There's not a lot of options on Houston, that's for sure. Even a naked Josh Allen isn't crazy if you think he spreads it out or gets in on the ground. But I think your goal is going to be Josh Allen plus Diggs. Sanders and Beasley can come along for the ride. I don't know if you need the bring back for the Texans. If the Lions defense can't make Justin Fields look good, I don't think anybody will. 5,200 for Fields, projected for 18.8 fantasy points. The matchup doesn't get any better, but you're just really not expecting a ton of scoring. You're going to need him to get in the end zone on his own. 9% chance though of being in the optimal lineup. That's just it's a test case to what his salary is and simply what quarterbacks score. He's 5,200. He might as well be free, but he's still not even in the optimal lineup. Double digits. Only one quarterback got there. So be aware of that. You can mix and match your quarterbacks. It's all dependent on your wideouts and tight ends. Never expected this one to be the case. Number 2, Taylor Heineke, 5,900, projected for 21 fantasy points. The Atlanta Falcons defense ranks 28th via PFF. The football team is a slight favorite. Oh, we're getting closer to 50 total points for this game. 47.5 is enough. But once again, another 5K quarterback in this case. The theme was running backs earlier. Another 5K quarterback that more than works. Clearly, you can go to a Heineke, or we can say you want to go to McLaurin. That'll work. Thomas, that'll work. Bringbacks on Atlanta, Pitts, Ridley, it all works. As a game stack, this one might be a little sneaky. But finally, we close it out with number 1, Jalen Hurts, 6,900, 24-point fantasy projection. They're 7-point dogs, so he's probably going to have to throw. You hope that his legs are involved as well. 54.5-point game total. What's not to like? A matchup against the Chiefs D that ranks 25th. What's not to like? 11% of the time Hurts goes for north of 30. 11% of the time he is in the optimal. Jalen Hurts is my number 1 quarterback for this week. Alrighty, folks, that will do it. Those are my top 5s for week 4 in the NFL on DraftKings. Keep your eyes peeled. There's a FanDuel version of this video around here somewhere. I'll have updates Sunday morning for you. You don't want to miss it. I'll see you guys again Sunday morning for a Contenders edition for Sunday Night Football. Good luck this weekend, everybody.